sir, if your video is there. Good evening, friends. Welcome to GEOL's Budget 2021 webinar. I have with me Mr. Srivastava, a former Joint Secretary of TPL, a very learned income tax officer. And we have Mr. Rastogi, a former Joint Secretary in the TRU, a very experienced budget maker. He has spent perhaps more than half his career in the North Block making budgets. We have Mr. Sajid Jolly, partner in DMD Associates. Mr. Jolly, there's a movie called Jolly LLB. I hope he's going to be as humorous as that is. And we have Ms. Kavita Jha, a very senior advocate. And we'll start with her. Kavita, tell us what you think of the budget.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, there were a lot of noise and a lot of, we were hearing that there is going to be a new levy or like a COVID cess. But thankfully, so for this budget is concerned, no new levy or cess has been introduced to reduce the tax deficit. So that's a good part, we can say. But at the same time, the budget, we can say that it has chosen to spend a lot on health and infrastructure. But from a lawyer's point of view, there is a lot which we have to see in the fine prints. But as of now, we can talk about in this panel discussion is one thing. First thing which I want to mention is about faceless IT-80, then TDS on purchase of goods, then rationalization of M&A, then introduction of dispute resolution, then revamping of AAR, and then reduction of time limit in reopening the cases. So these are the fine gamuts, I think, as a panel discussion we can start with. We can start, since I have been given a chance to start with. So first point which I want to start with is regarding this faceless assessment of tribunal. So we have seen that in past, the department has started with faceless assessment and also with faceless CIT appeal proceedings. But in fact, CIT proceedings, in fact, it has just started. We don't know how much it is a success. And so far, hearing before CIT appeal is concerned is also, whether it is on the discretion of the commissioner or the joint commissioner, that issue per se is pending before the Delhi High Court. And Delhi High Court is seized of this matter. But when you're leaving, so far personal hearing is concerned, we all are aware that it is a part of audio alterum partem, a natural justice. Every SSE has to be given a chance to be heard. So when you are before an appellate forum and you want to argue your matter, so the only thing which as an SSE you want is that you should be heard properly. And now when you vest this as a discretion to the commissioner or to the joint commissioner, and only if he feels fit that yes, you need a personal hearing has to be given, then that may amount to arbitrariness. And that's the reason why this particular provision per se of faceless assessment scheme for CIT appeal is pending before Delhi High Court. Now, to see that since, of course, technologically there is an advancement, we have seen because of this pandemic also, something good has also happened because of these virtual hearings, the matters are being taken up. Now, when we're talking about faceless assessment, there are a lot of questions which are coming. Are we doing the same way, like the way it's going to happen, so far commissioner is concerned, or there is some new mechanism which is going to start, or so far, and since we know that ITAT is a final fact-finding authority, and when it is a final fact-finding authority, you file evidences which may run into thousand pages. So how is it expected that an SSE will have that satisfaction that yes, you are being heard and the tribunal members have actually understood your matter? So how this entire mechanism will start and how this people are going to have that kind of a satisfaction is the first point I thought I can raise, and then we can start with.
You're done with it. Okay, thank you. So maybe this faceless assessment is really something that we'll have to discuss seriously in the days to come. Sir Srivastava, can we have your views? Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah. Kavita has rightly been referred to certain provisions. No, this budget, as I see this time, the direct tax proposals address quite a few issues, but the most significant ones, yes, making ITAT faceless or doing away with settlement commission, doing away with authority for advance ruling. So, I mean, and then starting a board. I mean, board for advance ruling. I mean, that's an entirely different structure now. I mean, when we come to those proposals, we'll discuss. But yes, these are very, very changes of a very far-reaching consequence. Be it the settlement commission, be it the AR, or be it the faceless nature of the ITAT. Then these proposals also seek to settle some of the important disputes, overturning some decisions like Smith Securities of Supreme Court on goodwill or on partners share on the dissolution of the firm, and those are, yes, I mean, one may agree with the view of the revenue or not, but at least to that extent that the disputes get settled and attain some conclusive nature. Yeah, these are welcome steps. And lastly, I mean, some very good incentives have been provided for centers like IFC and and some those investment funds and the rest of those things. How does that convert really into investment into India? That's only time will tell. But yes, there is an attempt to incentivize the investment process. So overall, the attempt is to consolidate things, but there are certain areas which really need to be discussed, and one has to understand the logic, rationale of these proposals, and then whether these really needed to be done at this stage.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So that's for your initial comments. I think Mr. Goyal has joined us. Mr. Goyal, are you there? Okay. Sir, Rastogi Saab. Rastogi Saab is a veteran of budgets. Let's have your views, sir, please. Mr. Rastogi. Yes.
He is mute actually, yes.
Mute.
Mr. Goyal, good evening, welcome.
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening.
We can't see you or hear you again in your on the scene.
Now it's
I think it can be seen.
is now.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Goyal, welcome. We have just started the discussion.
Good evening, thank you.
We are waiting for Mr. Rastogi. He is here, but I think we.
Mute, sir. I think he is inviting you to speak, sir. So can you? Yes, sir. हाँ sir, आप muted हैं sir. Please unmute it. Yes, sir. Yes. I think the credit should not go to the budget for muting somebody, isn't it? Although, of course, there are lots many proposals which Srivasu Saab and Kaptaji, suggested, particularly this some of this judicial forum being converted into board or administrative machinery. So perhaps that will be a good area of discussion.
Yes. Okay, sir, finishes. I have something to say on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Rastogi Saab. If we can wait, I think we have been eagerly waiting for Rastogi Saab.
I had some problem with my connection.
Yeah, Shailendra was saying that for a change, you were being muted.
My impression is, Shailendra, I mean, my impression is that times have changed now and life is moving much more faster. And we are older, actually, we're moving in the opposite direction because the life is going faster and we are getting older now. But the point I'm making is that this budget making process has completely changed, and the laws are also completely changed.
I think so. There is again some problem with it. Kavita, you were saying something.
No, on this, because Shailendra mentioned about this revamping, and that's what Sir wanted to speak about. I said, the moment you talk about revamping, because Income Tax Settlement Commission, it was functioning. But the day when budget was announced, on that day itself, they said that no more filing application before Settlement Commission, all gone. It will be going for board. All pending applications will be decided by the board. And secondly, when the entire revamping of course, all of us are aware that there was no commission. So far AR is concerned, it was not functioning at all because there were no members. So no one is to be blamed about that. But since no members were there, it was not functioning properly. So revamping was a must. It was required. Nobody can dispute that. But then you have, what you have done is you have there's a board you have constituted, and that board will consist of, with due respect to all commissioners, that, there are 2 commissioners who will be appointed and they will be hearing the matters. So it's my personal view is, there may not be any personal bias, but there could be an institutional bias. Because, as a commissioner, you have to defend, it has to be pro-revenue. Because we are seeing in matters like in GST matters where AR is functioning, for 90% of cases are always in favor of the revenue. So that is something which, it's not an impartial tribunal or a board in that sense. So that's what I wanted to say after this would have finished.
But do you suggest that the GST AR should also go the income tax way?
Sorry, sir?
Do you suggest that we should close down the AR in GST?
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'm yet to find a single person who's happy with the working of the AR in GST.
That's what I'm saying. Sir, GST, now since what they have done is they have revamped, all right. But so for judicial members were concerned, they were hearing the matters, and at least that impartiality or, institutional bias, nobody would have even argued about that. But now today what we feel is it's somewhat like DRP. Dispute resolution process, it was there. I know it is often said that noble policy becomes victims of administration. So similarly, we can say that it was a very good perspective, very good reason why it was brought into. But ultimately, people, the only good thing about DRP is, yes, your demands are stayed for 9 months, then you can directly go to ITAT. That's good. But at the same time, we know that 99% of, your demands get affirmed in DRP. So similar kind of a situation should not. Now, since AR has been given power, after AR, you can go to High Court, you can challenge. It is no more binding on the SSC or the department. I said this is bound, this litigation is bound to increase. That's what I wanted to say.
Fine. Can we go to Mr. Jolly? Subject to the condition that we'll go back to Mr. Rastogi when he's able to join us.
Yeah, Sachit can hear, yes.
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to interrupt you when Mr. Rastogi joins us. Please excuse me.
All right.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, let me start by something which is non-tax for a change. I thought one of the biggest announcements in the budget was the 35,000 crores set aside for vaccinations of COVID. I believe that there is no other bigger announcement which will drive the economy forward than this 35,000 crores which has been set aside. Because please see the public sentiment, the scare in the minds of the people will not go unless vaccination is complete. And I think that is a priority. The second important aspect which I heard for the first time in the budget was some 2,500 odd crores being set aside for dealing with the problem of urban pollution. Ultimately, if you're going to have brain drain because of the pollution levels in the cities like Delhi.
Sachit, I'm very sorry. Can you bear with me, Mr. No. Please continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Again, I'm sorry. Rastogi sir, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. Only some connection problems are there. Let him continue, then I'll join.
Okay, sir. Fine. Yes, Sachit.
Yeah.
He has given you permission to continue.
That's really kind of him. I was also eagerly looking forward to hearing him. But yeah, just to complete on that you have now finally the government waking up and setting aside something for dealing with a human issue, which can only drive the investments further. Now, coming to the direct tax proposals, I would put them as a great policy initiative, because I think right from the indirect tax settlement scheme to then the Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas scheme, the Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, I think the attempt has been to cut down litigation. I mean, you have to give 100 marks to the government for trying. But in that attempt, a lot of unsettled positions are seemed to be unsettled. And I think that's where the challenge will be, knowing lawyers and the community, and I take partly blame for that, we will find avenues to increase litigation. And the government, unfortunately, has in this budget given us enough avenues to do that. Let me touch upon very two broad aspects which I think are going to create havoc in going forward. One is the change in the reassessment law. We had the reassessment law in the 1922 Act. 61 Act had some law up till 1989, which then got changed, and then you had another regime. Now, all the jurisprudence which has got settled on that 148 has now been completely unsettled. You have a new regime that before initiating a 148 notice or before giving a notice, the officer is required to conduct an inquiry. He has to take an approval from the commissioner. He has to give an opportunity of hearing to the assessee, excellent provisions, and then only he'll give you a 148 notice. But equally at the same time, what you've done is the meaningful words of reason to believe, which caveated or stopped any abuse of the reassessment proceedings, those words have been taken away. I remember there was, when the 1989 amendment or the law in 148 came, there was enough litigation on this aspect that minus the word reason to believe, the provision could be unconstitutional. Now, I think that's something which will have to be tested, whether this provision in its current form will muster the test of constitutionality. That's one. The second, and I think the most critical amendment which I see is going to hurt investor sentiment, is the withdrawal of the AAR. And I think there, my sense is it's a going back on your word. 2015, Mr. Jaitley on the floor of the House announced that you will have at least 2 AARs now, not only Delhi, but we'll set up a center in Bombay. I don't know what has changed between 2015 and 21, that you have to go back on your promise made on the floor of the House to say, I'm going to even withdraw the present AAR and send you to a collegium of commissioners, which Ms. Jha rightly said is going to be the next DRP. You are going to have the High Court flooded with appeals from the AAR, the new, or not the AR, but the BAR. In fact, if you literally pronounce it, it's a bar to ending litigation. It's a bar, according to me. It'll encourage litigation. So I think overall, the attempt has been there to settle litigation, but these two changes, according to me, are going to be a handful for us in the years to come. My preliminary thoughts on that.
Kavita wants to.
Yeah, I thought since Sachit has touched upon the point of 148, I thought before Rastogi sir answers anything, on 148, I think there is one more point which I want to supplement. Of course, the reason to believe point, because all throughout these years, we have been, doing this Kelvinator judgment and Usha judgment and so on and so forth. But now, if there is a serious tax evasion of more than 50 lakhs, what the government has, what the budget proposes is that there has to be an evidence of concealment. Now, the question is this evidence, the reason to believe and vis-a-vis evidence. How do you say this evidence so far this evidence is concerned, whether this has to be as per Section 3 of the Evidence Act, or whether this court may now, again, this will also be a subject matter of dispute. Because when you go, because we know strict sense of Evidence Act is not applicable, but when you're using the term evidence per se, then the first thing which comes in our mind is the definition of Section 3, which is as per the Evidence Act. So evidence per se, testing, what do you mean by evidence? What evidence have they collected will be a matter of lot of disputes so far. This particular aspect of 147 is concerned.
Yeah, I think we'll hear Mr. Srivastava also on this, but a little later. I think again.
Sure.
Mustafi Saab, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Clear.
Yeah, you have to hear only for a few minutes.
Yeah, that may be fine, sir. I think your bandwidth is low or something.
Yeah, I only make a very quick comments on this budget.
Yes, sir. Please
so
go
far
ahead,
as
sir.
direct
Please go
taxes
ahead.
are concerned.
We have been waiting for
I
you.
think the emphasis is that with the introduction of GST, government feels that a lot of evasion of tax is taking place, and particularly in the matter of taking ITC, that is input tax credit. So they are very much concerned about it, and that is why they are taking lot of steps to ensure that this is curtailed and it is reduced substantially. So to that extent, I think now the burden has been put, or they are trying to put the burden entirely upon the person who is taking the credit. So he has to ensure that the other person has paid the tax, the other person has issued the invoice, the other person has loaded the invoice on the platform, and then only you can take the credit. So that is one aspect I'm seeing, that they feel that with the introduction of GST, perhaps earlier also evasion was taking place, but with the introduction of GST, I think this is a phenomenal problem now for the government, how to arrest this practice of malpractices and abuses so far as ITC is concerned. The other factor I find is that not only government wants people to be healthy, but they want them to be alert also. So that is why they are saying that now all the summons or notices or orders, etc., in the case of customs at least, they will be on the portal, and that will be deemed to have been served upon the person. So you cannot take the plea that I did not receive the show cause notice or I did not receive the summon. Now you have to be very careful that if it is on the portal, then it is deemed to have been served upon. And the other factor is that they are taking lot of steps so far as this implementation of GST is concerned, and they are giving lot of liberty also at the same time, in the sense that compared to our days when everything was on paper, they are trying to make the entire tax administration digital. And we never thought in those days that there will be a day when everything will be on one common portal. Never heard about common portal in those days. But these days, everything on the computer and everything is available digitally. Even in the case of ITAT, I think the faceless appeal they're talking, my impression is that they are saying that even the papers will be loaded on the portal only, and nothing will be physical, and everything has to be put on the portal. And that is why the ITAT will be able to download it, and the hearing, etc., may or may not take place. And I think these are the few comments I want to make. That other point is that there is a concern that so far as custom duties are concerned, I think they are giving the impression that there is nothing like an ideal tax structure. It is only a trade-off from the practical point of view. And that is why in some cases they are decreasing the duties, some cases they are increasing the duties. So in earlier period, people used to debate that we should have a stable tax structure. And so far as duties are concerned, they should not be changed so frequently. But I think now the impression being given is that duty will be changed any day whenever the government feels like. And there is no stability so far as custom duties are concerned. And there is a concern that perhaps people will get more protection so far as domestic industry is concerned if the duties are raised, and people may demand more protection, and therefore they may ask for more increase in the duties. So that I think it is matter of quite some concern, because there has to be some stability so far as custom duties are concerned. And they are taking some steps on the front of this anti-avoidance, etc., or on countervailing duties, or in the case of additional duties, etc. But I think by and large, the things are moving in a different direction, in the sense that the administration is changing, administration is more digital, administration is more proactive. One point I want to make is that they have made a provision that show cause notice will be issued at least within 2 years. when the investigation or etc. is going on. But at the same time, they are not making any provision so far as officers are concerned. They must make a provision that after the hearing takes place, the order should be issued at least 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. It cannot drag on like this, that they never issue the order. On that front, the government has not taken any steps. They should have done that also simultaneously. So I will not take much time. I will end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Goyal. Mr. Goyal, can you hear me? I think today we have.
I just call him, sir.
I think he is on some other call, perhaps.
Okay. But sir, meanwhile, I was wondering, maybe I would like to, ask Srivastava Sahab and Kapitaji, both of them, that now we have accumulated, the mountains of experience in terms of virtual hearing. The Supreme Court, all the high courts have done it, during the pandemic period. And almost, 1 year of experience we have. And huge number of cases where we find that virtual hearing was granted and various kinds of permutation combinations were also attempted, in fact. And so that experience, keeping that, experience behind us, how exactly this faceless thing is really going to worry the professionals. The Sachit has already done it, the virtual hearing. Most of the SSCs are familiar with the virtual hearing. And it's this faceless, I guess, is, most of us are probably a little worried about that there is no face. But I think this faceless is a terminology which carries the connotation that it's yes, ma'am, please tell me.
No, I think
Please tell me, yeah.
faceless tribunal, see, so far commissioner is concerned, and because commissioner, I think that right to be heard, that particular proposition, and whether commissioner has a discretion to allow or not to allow. Because as an SSC, because it's an appellate forum, there are evidences, there are documents which I want to file and I want to show. And suppose if you apply your discretion and you say that no, personal hearing is not required, then that discretionary, is it? Can we say it is not out of arbitrariness, or is it actually there is no biasness or whatever? There could be n number of reasons. So if that particular point, that since I have not been given a chance to be heard, I have filed a writ petition. And every SSC in every matter, they'll feel, even a small matter, an individual will feel that I am not heard properly, so I'll go to the court. So again and again, that litigation will not stop, it will increase. Now, when we're talking about faceless ITAT, the fundamental problem I feel is,
yes,
that's what tribunal is concerned, it's a final fact-finding authority. So it's when you go to High Court, you're only on a substantial question of law. You are not on any facts, unless it is perversity is shown. But when you're before tribunal, I have seen for the SSCs in so many matters that 1,000 pages of evidences, additional documents are being filed. How do you know that there can be 10 points that the members have read, they have understood, and now they don't want to be heard? So at least when you're explaining your points, you're arguing your matters, you don't want that X member or Y member or Z member. So that faceless concept, if it is the way it is going to be before commissioner and the assessments, then it is a problematic. If it is only virtual and you are giving face to it, and still you can argue, if what I got from you is that it will be virtual. If it is virtual and you're arguing a matter virtually, I think over the period of time, we all are arguing matters before virtually, and it is going well. I won't give 100 out of 100, but it's not bad. It's going on well. And over the period, I think bandwidth will increase, software will change, and things will improve. At least we are on a better side.
Absolutely, ma'am. In fact, this is what I said. ITAT being a judicial forum, it is going to basically follow what Supreme Court and High Courts have done, not exactly what the Commissioner of Appeals are doing using discretion, etc., etc. So I think that experience will be useful, in terms of going faceless for the tribunal.
In fact, Mr. Shailendra, may I just come back?
Please.
The Income Tax Appellate Tribunal was the first body to start virtual hearings even pre-COVID. There were circuit benches of the tribunal constituted to dispense justice through video conferencing. I think Ahmedabad had circuit benches in Rajkot. I think that was a great step. And I think nobody in his right mind today will oppose virtual hearings. In fact, on a side note, I had filed a personal petition in the Supreme Court recently challenging the Delhi High Court decision to reopen physical courts. So I think everybody today understands that virtual hearing is the way forward. If not virtual, at least a hybrid system should be in place. I think there is no quarrel with any proposition. Even for that matter, submissions should be made mandatory, if you ask me, even in tribunal. That's not a problem at all. The problem which Ms. Jha rightly highlighted is making hearing or a personal hearing optional or at the discretion of the tribunal. That is the larger question, because today the Commissioner Appeals has to take an approval from the CBDT to give a hearing in the faceless appeal process. Now, in this context, if the discretion is left either to the President or maybe, I don't know, tomorrow you may say Ministry of Law and Justice will decide whether you get a hearing or not. No, that is not how a fair and independent tribunal can function. The second and important aspect will be that if it is left discretionary to the tribunal, will that order deciding the discretion be an administrative order or a judicial order? And is that appealable or is that challengeable in a writ? Now, these are moot questions which will have to be answered somewhere. And I hope that what you said today is factored in, that it is actually a virtual hearing, all documents preloaded, along with written submissions made mandatory, maybe in 10 pages, 8 pages, 12 pages, whatever, make it mandatory. But do not take away the option of hearing. I don't think that's how a tribunal can function. That's my...
It will not. It will not. It will not, because the government also know that it's going to be challenged immediately, and they don't want that. So they will not do that. It's a fact-finding body, of course, as Kavita ma'am, right in the beginning said that, that thousands of pages of, the memos will be uploaded and all the evidences, other papers. So naturally, you wanted to add something, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just want, in fact, there's a procedure, and just by way of an example I'm giving, whether a particular order is on an administrative side or on a judicial side. There is a section called Section 11 in the Arbitration Act. So there was a dispute earlier, now it's now settled, that whether, suppose there are, I'm just giving just to give an example, that's the reason I'm using Arbitration Act. Just for example, like there are two parties, they've already agreed upon that for me, if there is any dispute which arises in the contract, Mr. Srivastava and Mr. Goyal, they will be the arbitrators. But ultimately it is seen that, both of them, the parties have not agreed upon and there is no consensus. So I can go to the High Court and ask for an appointment of an arbitrator. Now this appointment of an arbitrator only Chief Justice can do. The question which arose before the court in several matters, is it on an administrative side or is it on a judicial side? Because what function is he doing it? So similar situation will arise in tribunal. When he is exercising a discretion to give a personal hearing or not a personal hearing, that it is in which side? Then how is it supposed to be challenged? So there are going to be innumerable cases and litigations that is bound to happen. So that's discretion moment you're applying. So because we have seen, starting from Konkan Railway, and it went on for so many years, every court was flooded. Every Friday, I remember in my experience that after 2 o'clock, these matters were fixed up, whether it is on the administrative side or is it on a judicial side. So courts will be flooded if these are, proper guidelines, proper notifications are not out.
So, ma'am, since it's going to be a speaking order, I am pretty sure that the judges will prefer and the tribunal members will prefer hearing you first.
Otherwise,
yes. I think Mr. Goyal is ready now. Mr. Goyal,
I think we'll hear Mr. Goyal. We have been, I think, too hyper-technical. When lawyers are not allowed to appear, they are not going to keep quiet. And as Sachit said in the very beginning, this also is going to be part of the litigation, whether I have a right to be heard or not and physically see it.
So we always fight for our clients. Lawyers have no vested interest. It is always the clients first.
Mr. Goyal, I think we have been waiting too long to hear Mr. Goyal. We couldn't get you last time we tried. And I think again it's gone missing.
May I make a comment? May I make a comment?
Please do, sir. Please. Mr. Vastavi wants to say something.
My feeling is this.
Meantime, Shaili, you can try calling. Mr. Goyal is here. Mr. Goyal, just a second. We are not able to hear you, see you.
No, I deliberately I was keeping quiet. So as and when you want me to speak, I will speak. Yeah.
1 second, sir. Mr. Vastavi wants to add something.
You see, my feeling is this concept of faceless, if you ask me frankly, the idea seems to be that the assessee or the appellant will not know who is the person going to decide your case. And perhaps the background may be that they should not come in contact with each other. I mean, this connivance kind of thing should not take place. Probably that may be the thing at the back of their mind. But you may have faceless in the sense that you don't know who is going to decide your case. But then this hearing is entirely different thing entirely, because that is a part of proceeding, that the hearing must be given. In fact, we are going backwards. In many cases, the courts have held that even if a law provision does not make provision for hearing, if you are going to decide anything against a person which is affecting his interest, you must give a hearing. In some cases, the section did not say that a hearing should be given, but the courts have taken the view that because you are going to decide something against him, therefore you must give him a hearing. And here we are going the other way around now, that we are deciding whether a hearing should be given or should not be given. Hearing must be a right of the assessee or the appellant. He must be heard if you are going to decide anything for which he has filed an appeal or he has filed a petition, whatever it is. I don't know how this is going to work, that without hearing a person, you are deciding his case. He is waiting for so many days, so many months, only to be heard by someone with whom he can make his submissions and try to convince him. So I think this government should reconsider that hearing is a must. Hearing must be given. You may ask for anything else. That paper should come digitally, etc.
Hearing will be given, sir, because I think that they have just borrowed the terminology, faceless from, the assessment side and the departmental side. Otherwise, what they meant was virtual hearing, I guess. That is what they will clarify later, I guess.
Yeah.
Or the faceless will acquire a new connotation.
Yeah. Here is.
This is, sir, you cannot have a face off going faceless.
Personal hearing or a right to be heard, it's a basic principle of administrative law.
Yes.
Yeah, which you are not going to allow to be denied. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Goyal.
Good afternoon. Okay, I'll in a few minutes, maybe 3-4 minutes, let me share with the panel and the audience.
All yours, sir. We are eagerly waiting for you. Yes.
Some of my views, suggestion, comments on the Union Budget 21-22. The first point on the customs, or before coming to the customs, let me share with all of us that I fully understand tax is a price of a civilized society. So we all as a citizens have to pay tax, no quarrel, and we would be very happy to pay tax which government need for the overall society. However, there should be some method in this madness. There should be some certainty, because ultimately when the consumer buys the goods, he buys the goods for the value of that, and the tax which is inbuilt, it's not for the zeal of nationalism or patriotism he is paying. If he's buying a car or he's buying a bicycle, he sees the value of that, and if he can afford, he will buy. Now, custom duty, every year some part would be picked up and the rate would be changed. Our view or suggestion is there should be stability. Some auto parts, sometimes some parts here. How do we make a plan? You have planned a model, you have planned some production, based on that some cost. If every year these rates keep changing, it becomes very difficult, because all this manufacturing are a long-term process. You have to look at, okay, this product is to make, this is the cost, this is the price what market can bear. So every frequent changes in the custom duty rates, our request would be, should not be resorted. The second point or comment or suggestion is on equalization levy. Last year it came, we had a round of discussion with the government of the ambiguity. The basic purpose of equalization levy was on e-commerce, like say Amazon or somebody where it doesn't have the presence in India, but because of digital platform, is doing some business in India, so naturally is earning something. And a new type of tax. This is neither direct tax nor indirect tax, but okay, some tax was levied. So in name of giving the clarification, Yes, royalties has been said, but other places where they say even if you have placed a purchase order through digital form or you made a payment through digital form, it would be called an e-commerce and subject to this 2% levy. A prima facie, this one shows a contradictory approach of the government. One way we are trying to say promote digitalization, but of a holding and subsidiary company to multinational, if they are doing a communication of purchase requirement or a payment through digital mode, then will be subject to this. So from this, if in a lighter mode, if I say, instead of sending through the email or through a digital platform, take a print, and if you courier it, then it will be out. So in case government need money, better is to increase the custom duty by 2%. Then saying if you're communicating through digital mode, you will be subject to equalization levy, which is actually not an e-commerce. E-commerce is a totally different thing. So this new equalization levy to me is a retrograde step for digital way of working. On the income tax, some portions where not what has been done vis-a-vis what has not been done. Like last year, the government came out with a very good scheme of a simple tax rate of 25% and 15%. 25% for existing companies, 15% for new manufacturing plants. There was a cutoff date. You start in 19 and start SOP by 23. The industry association has made a request that because of the COVID, almost all operations has got delayed by 1 to 2 years. Like a GDP, it's in a minus, so even if next year is plus. So all those things are getting delayed. The request was made through the industry bodies to extend that date. The government has extended only the startups date, but not for regular companies. In our view, that's a very significant miss. If we want to promote manufacturing or what we call Make in India or Atmanirbhar, then some genuine suggestions must be looked into or at least educated back to the members that why this is not acceptable. The last point on the GST, it's a welcome that what is appearing, somebody has uploaded seller and what has been available, what we call in 2A credit would be allowed. However, we wish this should have been done prior to even 2017 when you did. And if the government would have made this little simpler, that basic data, that is a seller GSTN number, purchaser GSTN number, invoice number, date, and tax amount, if that is available 24/7, visible on the internet or on the portal to both, it's a very good system, but hope this will remain available 24/7 and not in the batches. If that is there, industry would be very happy that, okay, when you do the purchase transaction, do the cross check whether that invoice is available or not. If the government is too worried, see, basically the purchaser can only see that he has issued the invoice, but whether he has paid tax to the government or not, there's a two-way. If the government has a faith on the seller, they can allow with this. If the government doesn't have the faith or doesn't want to take risk, in my view, they can get into what we used to have a PLA scheme. Ask the buyer or ask the citizen to make an advance deposit and link their computer system that whatever is the balance, he should be able to issue only that much of invoices and get automatically reflected. So that this whole issue of fake invoice, improper credit, all those things can be controlled, or I would say can be made zero. I think with that I will conclude. Overall, it's a good budget. Thank you.
Yeah, overall it's a good budget, but you still need, you wish there were better things to come. I think before we go further, a little on what he said about GST invoices. Would Kavita or Sachin like to react to that?
Yes, yeah, I will. On GST invoices, of course, there's one judgment which we saw, which has actually now been reconciled, is this Bharti Telemedia judgment. Because there was a provision of, I think, exact section, I think it's section 16 or 64 clause 2, wherein that if your invoices, if you have raised, and there was a provision under the state GST, but there was no similar provision under the central GST. They said, and that is how it was challenged before Delhi High Court, and the Delhi High Court decided in favor of the SSC. That matter went to the Supreme Court. Now they have brought a change, an amendment in that, and then saying to bring in line with the state GST, that when you're availing ITC, then it also has to be shown to the onward supply. And when there is no mismatch, then only you can avail the ITC. Non fake invoices and fake ITC. In fact, I had a chance to appear for a bail matter for fake invoices, because that's a problem, that's a headache which the government has. They have busted almost 2,000 crores of fake invoices which the SSCs have availed. There is a big round tripping which is happening, and that's how the arrest, and that's the power of arrest, which is section 32 and 69 of CGST, and which has also been upheld as constitutional. So the power of arrest for, if it is more than 5 crores, the commissioner will have the power, CGST, and he can arrest. So now that fake invoices also, the government wants to, plug this loophole, so that, ultimately, if you're availing any ITC and which is on the basis of fake, if there is no match between the your return and the outward supply, then you will not get credit of that.
No, but what he says is, go back to the old PLA system.
Yes.
If you have the money deposited prior to your clearance, you will be allowed to issue an invoice. Then the whole system of fake invoices, arresting chartered accountants and advocates along with the culprits, all these things will go. That is what Mr. Goyal said.
That is one of yes.
Do you think it's possible or possible?
No, I think.
Or would the
I think the way.
You like it?
Yes, the way I think that is one a possible view which is saying, and it was possible earlier. That's how it used to happen. So for this PLA is concerned and PLA balance, how it was treated, maybe for moderate or for unutilized moderate credit. So so the way this CGST Act has moved and the way it is moving, I don't think a government will come back to its old earlier PLA system.
Even in the present system, what it means is.
May I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Rastogi sir, you are an expert in this. Yes.
See, I think we have to be fair to the government also. You see, in policy making, when you make policies, you presume certain things. That people will abide by law, people will assumptions we make, and then you give some relaxation. If the compliance is good, you give a lot of relaxation. But if the compliance is bad, then it is equally the duty of the government or the policymakers to change the policy. Now in GST, what exactly had happened? They thought that with this digitalization and with everything on the common portal, the compliance will improve very significantly. But unfortunately, what happened is that more than 250 persons have been arrested and thousands of crores of ITC has been fraudulently taken. Only invoices were issued and the goods did not move. That is why the government has to make changes in the policy. And as far as honest taxpayers are concerned, if you ask me frankly, they are not affected by all these changes because his supplier will upload the invoice on the portal and he will pay the tax also. So he will get the credit instantaneously. There should not be a problem. The problem will be only when somebody does not comply with the law or the procedures. I mean, there can be no explanation for this, why a person who issues the invoices and pays the taxes also is not able to upload the invoices on the portal. What is the difficulty in that? I mean, you are doing thousands and thousands of transactions digitally every day. It is such a simple mechanism. So I think to be fair to the government, they have to arrest this tendency of people misusing the law. And therefore, to that extent, I think the changes they are suggesting are not bad changes or they are not impractical changes. And they are not changes which is very difficult to comply with. That is my comment on this.
So in fact, may I come on that?
Yeah. Yeah, please.
And, with a heavy heart, I may respectfully disagree with Mr. Rustagi on that. And I'll tell you why. Mr. Rastogi is right that if there is a problem in the system, it needs to be arrested. There is no doubt on that proposition. But that problem has arisen largely because the entire system was not digitalized. And that's the government to blame. There's nobody else to blame. They've been dilly-dallying for the last 3.5 years in making the entire system digital. It's not that the users are prohibiting them from making it. Now, the problem of fake invoices is genuine, and I accept that. The idea of removing that was to make the entire system digital. There are breaks in the system today, and therefore the entire system is not seamless. Now, because there is a problem, you can't then assume all taxpayers are corrupt. What has happened in this, in this area of litigation is, and I'll practically having dealt with a couple of them recently, is that if there is a sequence of events happening at the lowest level, let's say A sells to B and B sells to C and C sells to D. Now D may be completely oblivious to what has happened between A and B. Unfortunately, prosecution notices and arrest warrants are issued even to somebody who's sitting at D level. He doesn't know what has happened at the lowest level. So the solution was to arrest the problem at the lowest level, cut down fake invoices by making the entire system digital, and not by presuming that all taxpayers are corrupt and they will indulge in fake invoicing. That's the only solution I could think of. Otherwise, you will see, the GST authorities becoming the next level of enforcement directorates and arresting people left, right, and center. So I think the solution lies in digitalization, not in assuming and presuming that all taxpayers will indulge in fake invoicing.
Just to add to what Sachin said.
Yeah, Sachin had a point, sir, but there is also a point, from Mr. Rustagi, that the government, I guess the total figure has crossed 90,000 crore, the fake ITC being able, and it's a serious problem for the government. Yes, the government is in a state of panic, and that's the reason that they have gone for some legislative amendment. But sir, I was wondering, when GST law itself provides, some kind of solution, section 149 talks about the compliance rating, which will take care of the problem of Mr. Goel. If you start rating, then Mr. Goel will know in advance that what rating has been given to the supplier.
No, advance problem. See, advance has a financial implication, Shailendra. Advance means you have to deposit the money with the government. You may supply the goods, you may not supply the goods, and therefore your money will be kept lying there. When you ask people to pay the advances, then they make a representation that it is a financial burden upon us. And all through you are asking
compliance ratings. I'm talking about the compliance rating.
So, I mean,
GST law, sir, section 149 talks about compliance rating. And with the compliance rating, sir, the compliance of a supplier is to be rated. And they are able to work out some kind of mechanism, how exactly the rating will take place, what are the parameters, the risk assessment, etc.
I'm only raising a point that if people are honestly complying with, then what they have done or what they propose to do, is it going to be any hardship to the taxpayer? The point is that he has paid the tax, so that tax is reflected. He has issued an invoice, so he invoiced it, and that is all the government says, that there is no problem on that. The question is that in implementing all these parameters, is it any great hardship in these days when you are working digitally for anything?
Yeah.
Is it a difficult process? You don't have to go anywhere.
That is what Sachit was saying, sir. The government had a completely messed up system. If this was possible, if the invoice could be uploaded and if it could be seen by the one who received that invoice, there would have been no problem. But the problem is now that what he said A, B, C, D, and D doesn't know what A has done.
No, my problem, you see, the difficulty is, I understand that, I appreciate that. You see, they have introduced digitalization on a huge, massive scale, unprecedented. I mean, millions and billions of transactions are there in GST. So nobody could have thought about it. And therefore, any system which you introduce, that takes time to settle down. Maybe in our case, it has taken more time, 3.5 years, but it takes time to settle. I mean, there are some practical difficulties, procedural difficulties, but the fact remains that having regard to the objective in mind, when you are moving digitally all through billions of transactions digitally, money you are supplying and sending digitally, purchases you are making digitally, everything you are doing digitally. Today,
Yes, sir. In fact, what Mr. Goyal had suggested was only something like that, sir.
Payment
An
today,
online
context you have to see, they are trying. You see, you cannot make fundamental changes every day. I mean, you have removed that PLA and suddenly you bring PLA again. So these fundamental changes are difficult to bring back. I mean, they are not time tested that that is the only solution. There can be better solutions also. So government is thinking of some other alternative, and in my opinion, it does not cast any huge extra burden on the assessees or the taxpayers. That is the way
Yes, sir.
I feel. Today, even income tax, for example, my TDS may be deducted by somebody, but if it does not upload, I don't get the benefit. I have to pay for that. But the income tax department feels this is the best way. I mean, he has to tell his person who has deducted the tax that kindly upload, otherwise I will not get the benefit of this and I will have to pay more tax. But then income tax department feel let these two people fight out. Our system should work smoothly. So that is, I mean, in 6 months or 8 months time, it will all settle down in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
But
Hopefully.
what Mr. Rustage is suggesting is that, I mean, the compliance side, and that it's a true story, sir. The lot many people are filing GSTR 3B, but good number of people are not filing GSTR 1. There is a complete mismatch. And that is creating a lot of problem for the GST and also for matching this. So if it is not filed in GSTR 1, then in 2A it will not be reflected. If not reflected and you are claiming, higher credit ITC, then it's creating problem. That is where they have put the lock now in this legislative amendment. Unless it is uploaded, you will not be able to able the ITC. So I think that he is talking about that since the digital tools are available now, of course, GSTN initially had a lot of hiccups, a lot of technical glitches, which fortunately have settled down now. So, this mismatch should go. And with the introduction of e-invoicing, hopefully the problem which Mr. D.D. Goyal suggested, he rightly said that how exactly expect your SSC to ensure that all your suppliers are going to upload it and pay taxes, etc. I mean, that is not the job of, the buyer. So that is where the government should come, and this compliance rating thing could have worked.
Yeah, right. That's right. Anyway, I think incidentally, if I may recall, if I'm not wrong, it was Mr. Rastogi as JSTRU in CBAC who stopped this, who did away with the system of payment invoice wise and introduced monthly payment of excise duty and service tax. Am I right, sir?
Yes, correct, exactly. It used to be on a daily basis earlier.
Daily, hourly, invoice wise, the debit from PLA had to be made on each invoice, then on a daily basis. And Mr. Rastogi, I remember it was Mr. Rastogi who introduced this monthly payment of taxes. And in one of the meetings, I was told that many of the commissioners asked Mr. Rastogi, who asked you to do it? No SSC had asked you to do it. You are making things complicated. But then
I feel relaxation, they should come along with discipline and compliance level. I mean, otherwise, if people are misusing, please try to understand, if people are misusing a system, it is equally the responsibility of the government that they must take stringent steps in order to ensure that this malady is removed. I mean, otherwise, I personally feel that so far as this kind of compliance is concerned, it is not a difficult compliance, either on the part of the supplier or on the part of the receiver. It is a very simple compliance if you ask me. All the government is saying that please upload your invoices, and they are saying that if you upload your invoices, file the tax returns correctly, your your buyer will get the credit. All that is the system is envisaging now. Nothing wrong in that.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
you can't wish away the fact that thousands of crores of rupees are being misused by people, and government does nothing for that. How can it happen?
Yes, sir. I think we'll pass that system of invoicing in GST. In fact, there are several other unwelcome legislation in GST, which unfortunately I don't think we have the time to discuss. Srivastava sir, are you here? I think while we went away from income tax to GST. Yes, sir. We would like to hear from your we didn't hear from you for a long time. Please, sir, on what has just happened. And in fact, Mr. Shailendra had also asked you a question about this faceless hearing. I think maybe that we can leave aside. Kavita is not going to keep quiet. Yes, sir, your opinion.
On faceless, I think it's not a idea to say that faceless is something which has to be shunned away. No, not that. The point is my only concern is that, which I had expressed on earlier occasion also, that it's a big cultural change. It's not a mere change of procedure. And it should not be, there is no biting hurry. I mean, there could be time to test what happened in CIT appeal, what happened there. I mean, gain those experiences and then try it at the higher forum. But yes, it has its own merits. I mean, nobody can deny that yes, I mean, it has a lot of merits in that. So let us leave, I think more details may come on that aspect, and then we can some other day discuss, leave at that. But probably what Sachit pointed out, a very area of reopening of the assessment, which he said, I mean, expressed a lot of concern. Yes, this is one provision which all along generated maximum litigation at all levels, from Supreme Court right down to the assessing officer. It has generated the maximum litigation on reopening of the assessment, single provision. So it needs to be addressed, and it needed to be addressed. In fact, in the task force also, we did try to address, but in some other form. But yes, here the point is, he said that reason to believe is not there, and that would going to create a lot of problem and raise the constitutionality validity of this provision. See, I mean, once the assessing officer is called upon to make inquiry and pass an order, why the reopening should be made. And that order will always be subject to an appellate process. Then where is whether you have the reason to believe expression or not? That's not their reason to believe when it was his opinion, and that opinion had to be judicially tested. Now it's a by way of an inquiry, an open order that he'll pass, that yes, I've looked into this, inquired into this, gave opportunity, I've heard the taxpayer, and it needs to be reopened. So it's a when a finding is being given on a set of facts after due opportunity to the city, I don't think that reason to believe expression should continue. I mean, that's it. Otherwise, then what is the point of changing? Then the litigation can't, the entire whole bunch of that litigation, if you look into the judicial precedents, it is on that word, reason to believe. So yes, so that is one. And one more aspect I'd like to comment on before I pass on. This authority for advance ruling, my take is that if it is to be made appealable by either side, then what is the use of having this authority? The whole idea of the authority for advance ruling was that you have a certainty and the process of assessment does not start. You get in advance a ruling, you file your return with that ruling, and both sides happy with that, no more further. If now it is going to be a finding which is open to challenge by either side, same it is as good as the assessing officer's finding, which is in any case going through appellate process. So why have two appeal channels now? Why have two processes? So better abolish that authority for advance ruling. No use in keeping that. If that is going to be, it has to have some binding nature of that decision. Otherwise, no idea. Settlement commission, yes, it was in the offing for some time. It had to go, but only thing is, the date of going on 1st February, and when it was being announced, and the other person being asked not to now hear, stop your hearing, close your files, and go back home.
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah.
could have been avoided. I don't know.
They took advantage of 11 a.m. budget speech. Sir. Had it been 5 p.m., probably it could have been filed, So, but sir, Srivastava, I would like to ask you, sir, did the task force where you were there as a member, why do you think, sir, this, did you suggest it, and also the government decided to lose the goodwill by amending section 32, sir?
About goodwill. Goodwill. One good thing in this budget is that the memorandum explaining the provisions is a very detailed one. And on this goodwill, if you were to read that memorandum, for the first time I have seen, it's a very, very well reasoned, giving the historical perspective, Supreme Court decision, how it was being misused, all that kind of thing. So ISMEP Securities was a decision which many people believed that it was not a correct decision, right? And so looking into host of other provisions relating to depreciation, and it was being misused. So they have decided to change it. I am happy about the certainty that this matter brings in.
Okay.
That is,
right,
in
sir.
tax laws, what is more important is the certainty of the provision and of the tax law, not that you are asked to pay a penny more or a penny less. That is the second aspect of the matter. Certainty is more important than the quantum of tax. Yeah, Kavita wants to say.
M&A space will take a big hit because of this, and the corporate restructuring is going to there's going to be a big impact on the corporate restructuring, because goodwill we have seen as a matter of record. We can say that especially where a major chunk of the acquisition prices of goodwill. Don't you think there is going to be a hit on this aspect? And all the corporate restructuring, the people have to seriously look into it.
In fact, just to add to what Ms. Jha said, just to add to what that's, in fact, one of the questions which I'm already being asked by at least about 5 taxpayers is, what happens to the goodwill which is already part of the block today?
Yes.
The law is that you can't rewrite the block. Now, what is already part of the block, you've not clarified today.
In fact, yes.
No longer it will be eligible for depreciation.
Correct. And one more aspect, sir, what is happening is schemes which are already filed in the court, which are pending approval. Are you going to take away what is already been maybe passed through the first motion? I mean, at least the grandfathering should have been allowed. If you want to have certainty, no difficulty. You want to disallow depreciation on goodwill, no doubt. But at least give some clarity on what happens to the accrued rights. And I think that also applies in equal to, sir, what you mentioned about the AAR. Now, somebody has made an investment of crores and crores in India after filing an AR. Today, you're telling him, I'm not going to let the AR decide. I'm going to send you to a collegium of commissioners, let him decide. I don't think that's how it should work. I mean, ultimately, government is the boss, but I mean, that's the...
May I make a quick comment on that? Yes, on the AR point, Sachit, you are right. I mean, in fact, they should have gone into the reasons why the chairman or vice chairman could not be appointed. There was a very good system of appointment, and the people used to come, good judges we have seen. I mean, the history has been very good of the AR functioning. But for the last few years, why the government was not able to get the right people on the bench? I mean, that was reason to be looked into, rather than throwing the good provision this way. Second, on the point of goodwill, Sujit, I'm right. You are right to that extent that yes, putting a certain stop does create complications. One, two, there could be goodwill in the block. There could be goodwill which is actually acquired by paying a consideration. I mean, so those aspects, yes, should have been looked into rather than keeping the goodwill out of the definition of intangibles. I mean, that's a rather a very, very much harsher way of addressing the problem. Yeah. So.
Thank you, sir. I think now it's time for us to wind up. We would have a quick 1 minute winding up reaction from each of the panelists. I think Mr. Srivastava has already done it.
Yeah.
So now I would go to Rastogi sir. 1 minute conclusion.
Yeah. Hello.
I think, sir, can you hear me? Rastogi sir. I think we lost him. Mr. Goyal, are you here?
What issue? What?
In general comment.
Concluding remarks, sir. 1 minute.
Sir, concluding remarks, sir.
Last word, sir. No. Mr. Goyal, are you here? I think we'll go to Sachit. Sachit, you can. I would like to have a comment on.
Is that
Yes, sir. Somebody say.
they are insisting upon better compliance,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and that is the message that you should follow the law. And if you don't follow the law, then the government is bound to make some big comfortable.
Okay, I think his voice is not clear, but I think he's extended it. If you don't follow the law, the government is bound to get you, and they will get you. I think that's the point he's trying to make. The problem is, even if you obey and follow the law, the government is still after you. That's, I think, the major problem. And Sachit, would you have some reason to speak on the reasons to believe or reasonable belief that Srivastava sir has said? In conclusion.
Yes, I just want to conclude by on the reason. I'll answer that question on reason to believe. Mr. Srivastava is absolutely right that the litigation on this aspect was on the subjectivity of the word reason to believe. That has been taken out by bringing in a mechanism, but that in itself has a lot of subjectivity. So I don't know, by replacing one subjective criteria by another subjective criteria, what will we achieve? In fact, the language used is information flagged by so-and-so will be used to reopen. I mean, if that's the language we are going to use in a statute having such large implications, then God bless. But I've always maintained, and parting comments, that devil and God lie in the detail. Unfortunately, in the detail is more devilish than godliness. And therefore, as a lawyer and as a litigator, I see very interesting times ahead for me to explore.
Wonderful. I hope you are not going to be a devil's advocate.
Unfortunately,
yes,
I have to.
You have to, yes. Good luck. Yes, Kavita ma'am.
Yes.
You have only 1 minute.
Okay. On reason to believe, I think they have used, it's flagged by risk management strategy formulated by the board. Again, the question will be, will it be public? Will we even get to know about this, what it is all about? So I think it's if you tell me to tell about budget, yes, it's an ambitious budget, and it has to be now focused, should be on implementation and execution. But so for litigation, as a lawyer, I can say, yes, every aspect, there are a lot of litigation I can see, there are a lot of disputes I can see. Good for lawyers, but it's not as simple, it's not this. It's not a simple in that sense interpretation. It will go to court, cases are going to bound to increase.
Your life is going to be comfortable. All our lives are going to be comfortable. Yes, Shailendra, would you like to sum up?
Yes, sir. In fact, I mean, of course, a very valid point made by all the expert panels. But going back to the details of the budget, I find that a huge chunk of money has been, earmarked for, the Digital India campaign. And going by the quality of connection which we are experiencing right now, I wish the Honorable Finance Minister could have earmarked more fund for digital infrastructure, because that's a global race where our style never is apparently moving towards the global superpower status, and in fact, good number of international players are also losing that status. But Digital India is a campaign very favorite, very close to the heart of the Honorable Prime Minister. I believe that could have been done. That would have been really nice. Although she has allocated good amount of money for, for the first time we are going ahead with the digital census. That's about 3,700 crore has been earmarked for that also. So I'm pretty sure, all these areas have been done. It's a wonderful budget. Overall, I give a lot of marks, maybe about 7.5. Because good number of things have been done. But of course, on the direct tax side, as the professionals highlighted, the goodwill, sir said that, there was a different shade of opinion that it was not a good decision. Of course, probably they also slumped for the slump sale. That was another challenging issues wherein we find some amendments in the direct tax side. As many as, I guess, about 95 amendments have been done. Some of them are pretty good in favor of the taxpayers, but everything cannot be in favor of taxpayers. Of course, the budget is all about, making some retrospective amendments as well. So, that is how they have lived up to the tradition, the great tradition which we have of retrospective amendment, which they have done. And I am pretty sure the GST side, of course, they are caught in doldrums. They are in a state of quicksand. They don't know what to do, because in some cases they have found huge number of GSTR1 being filed, but GSTR3 be missing. In good number of cases, GSTR1 are missing, but 3 be filed. It's a very catch-22 situation for GST authorities. They don't know what to do now. Everything being done through the portal, and the law being amended frequently, and they're also amending the rules to block credit, etc. And that is where industry is at great unease, and that unease will continue for some more time till the time something works out, something good. And I'm pretty sure I see bright future for my friends like Kavita ji and Jolly. Of course, they will have great future, lots of litigation, and of course consequential fruits also. So it's wonderful, sir. You can conclude now.
Thank you. It was a great opportunity for all of us to hear such experts. Unfortunately, if we really have to analyze the whole budget, I think it will take about 7 to 8 hours with the kind of knowledge that the panelists possess here. Maybe as Jolly says, it was between God and devil. The budget was so good to look at heavenly, but once you enter and scratch the skin, you find a lot of hell around. And maybe it's our job, the lawyers and journalists, to take people out of that hell, for which we all tried hard. It was great to have all of you here. And as Shailendra was saying, the mandatory or the traditional retrospective amendment is what all about the budget is. And fortunately, for giving 5 or 10 out of whatever, we had retrospective amendments are not always bad. In GST, we had a good retrospective amendment and a bad retrospective amendment. I think that balances it. Generally, when we speak about the budget, the first reaction is it's 9 out of 10. And when we go back and read the fine print, kya budget hai? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.